Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hacking HR podcast, the show where we talk about the amazing future of human resources and all things at the intersection of future of work, technology, organizations, innovation, transformation, people, and the impact in HR. During this show, we're going to be sharing ideas, data, stories, insights, experiences, and basically anything else that can contribute to helping you become a better HR leader and practitioner. Thank you so much for being with us today, and I do hope that you enjoy this show.
We enter the 2020s, this next decade. What's it really going to be about? And I think, a lot of people are talking about the future of work. And I think the role of HR is, if you want to get from here to there in the future of work, that is a road that has to run right through the middle of the human resources function as we know it. Unfortunately, for a lot of HR processes, functions, and practitioners, it's an extremely ossified, sclerotic, back office function, sort of unchanging. And at its worst, welcome to the future of work. Forget it. A lot of times for too many people, it's welcome to the portal. Your password was denied. It's the most dehumanizing function there is.
Robert is a vice president at the Center for the Future of Work in Cognizant. Previously, he was a managing vice president of research at Gartner as lead analyst on HR services. Robert has also held roles at Hewlett-Packard, G2 Research, and the British House of Commons. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Hacking HR podcast. Really excited to be chatting with my friend Rob. How are you, Rob?
I'm doing great, Enrique. How about yourself? Good to see you.
Likewise, thank you. You've been one of the first. You were one of the first speakers for any event that we've ever done in Hacking HR. I think we may have connected at some point in 2018. So the world has changed so much.
That's right. Yeah, down in San Jose, 2018. Yeah. Feels like it was 10 years ago.
I know, and it's just time is so really relative these days, right? I mean, unbelievably, we are recording this podcast in the middle of October, and the pandemic seemed to have started, just a couple of weeks ago, but it was like 7 months ago, or almost 7 months ago now.
That's right. I did your guys' event. I can't remember. I think it was February of 2020, and again, that feels like it was just yesterday. So it is weird. Like, the pandemic is. It's sort of, we're going to talk about the future of work a little bit here, but the pandemic is it's compressing time like an accordion. So we might have thought was, the future of work is in some respects the now of work.
So. And time isn't time anymore. It's, it's not what we thought about it before. It's I think for a lot of people, April was, lasted like 3 months, and then May really disappear like in a day. So I think time definitely has a different flavor these days. So Rob, very, very excited to talk to you about many things regarding the future of HR, the upskilling, the reskilling of HR to fulfill the jobs of the future. But I want to begin by asking you, you've had a lot of conversations with HR leaders, you've done a lot of research. What do you think HR will be about? What will be the thing that everybody will know HR for?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that both of my role here at the Cognizant Center for the Future of Work, which I've been a part of for really the last 6 years. Again, that's something that feels like it was just yesterday, but it started here in 2014. And prior to that, being an analyst at Gartner for many, many years, and sort of the lead analyst on HR services at Gartner, really seeing the evolution of HR. And so I think your question is, we enter the 2020s, this next decade. What's it really going to be about? And I think a lot of people are talking about the future of work. And I think the role of HR is, if you want to get from here to there in the future of work, that is a road that has to run right through the middle of the human resources function as we know it. Unfortunately, for a lot of HR processes, functions, and practitioners, it's an extremely ossified, sclerotic, back office function, sort of unchanging. And at its worst, welcome to the future of work, forget it. A lot of times for too many people, it's, it's welcome to the portal, your password was denied. It's the most dehumanizing function there is. So I think to your question, what its role is going to be about is the World Economic Forum has said, we've entered the fourth industrial revolution. We are, in the era of algorithms, automation, and AI, work streams that are suffused with more and more technology. The role of human resources is going to be about how do we blend the science of the job that uses the new machine, heavy computing, heavy use of algorithms, and blend that with what we would call the art of the job, which is things that humans are really good at, skills that no bot will ever be able to supplant. And then building a bridge. I want to talk a little bit more about this with you, but I think the last point I would make is connecting that to strategy. If HR has, fundamentally been about sort of being in the back office and being very reactive and sometimes almost, working with the legal department as sort of a flank covering exercise, if I can use that turn of phrase, how can it instead connect the dots at long last to strategy and build that bridge of, hey, if we're a bank, if we're a retailer, if we are a chain of mom and pop pet shops, how do we connect the stepstone path from today to tomorrow and use HR as a way to help build that bridge with the necessary people skills that we need?
Absolutely. I love that. And particularly, I love this idea of HR finding a way to merge the science and the art of the job, meaning the algorithms, the technology, with the human side of the work and the people side of what we're doing. Now, you're describing a kind of HR that, and I'm going to say this, I love HR, but it's this loving HR, like the kind of love where that if things don't work, you need to, bring those things up to fix them and to, have this relationship for the long term, right?
That's right.
And I know HR has done, individuals in HR have been trying to do a great work to keep organizations rolling and working during the pandemic. But I also acknowledge that there's still a huge gap between the place where we are today and the place where HR needs to be able to effectively combine or merge this science of the job, technology, algorithms with people and human and the human side of everything. So let me ask you this. What do you think HR needs to do in order to be effective as that agent of transformation in the organization? What don't we have today that we need to build?
Well, I think there's so much that does need to be built, but you got to sort of piece it out and do it as an order of magnitude and order of priority. And I think the absolute crucible of doing this right now is through learning and development programs. I mean, so much of what we talk about, all of us, you guys, me, everybody who's looking at this space is talking about skills and the need to reskill. And just like, it's the overused analogy, but, we moved into the first industrial revolution into a world of machines. And how do you work, sort of rote and repetitive stepwise functions as opposed to really artisanal craft? We've now kind of gone the other way, which is the machines can take away this drudgery of the job and we can double down on the things that we're really good at. So it might be analytical skills, selling skills, thinking skills, communication skills, all of those things that humans are very good at. As I said, machines can help, but they can't do it. And so the learning and development piece of this is really, really important. 10 years ago, you kind of rewind the tape and a lot of the locus of attention from a technology perspective in HR, it was really on things like, just rudimentary payroll and benefits administration systems. And we used to call it education and training, at the beginning of the 2000s. Now learning and development is truly about how do you skill. How do you get that calibration of art of the job and science of the job just right? You can really take a look at any job and it is an agglomeration of individual skills. And for a lot of people, you, I'm sure also, we talk about engagement in your job or in your role is a leading indicator of how successful your contribution is going to be to the firm, to the company, the organization that you work for. And for a lot of people that are just checked out and they are not engaged, how can we use learning and development as a way to re-engage their interest in their job? Again, sort of sunset the rote and repetitive drudgery of that job and double down on the things that make it exciting. I read some stats someplace that I think it was some astonishing number, either 25% of American workers are engaged in the job that they do, positively engaged. Like 50% of them are disengaged.
Yeah.
And then the remainder, whether it's 20 or 25%, are actively disengaged, which means they're kind of trying to sabotage the firm,
Yeah.
which is astonishing. So skills are really important. And by doing that, and there's a deceptively complex set of technologies and systems and platforms that can help to do that in a way that provides for dynamic feedback. If you do that well, you can help people, I think, graduate to whether they're going to stay with the company or not. You're going to get them to the right place where they need to be. And all of us, I think, can benefit from doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you're saying something that implies that there is a motivation, a self-motivation to learn as well, right? And sometimes I just, I come from technology. I came into the world of HR, and in the world of technology, if you're not literally learning every day, 6 months later, the thing that you know is already obsolete. But that's not true in the world of HR. That hasn't been true in the world of HR. In the world of HR, we are still doing things that were created in the 1970s, and we are still doing them today.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, how do you sort of not just motivate, but convince somebody in the world of HR that what we're doing is not enough to move the needle forward? It may have been enough to bring us to the place where we are today, but it's not going to be enough to move us to the place where we need tomorrow. How do we incentivize, motivate, encourage people to learn more and things that are perhaps outside of the traditional world of HR?
So I think there's two ways to come at that one. The first is for senior HR leaders, CHROs, and so forth. If you don't do this, somebody else is going to do it for you. It's all like the analogy I would use is, 10 years ago when sort of, the digital transformation revolution was coming, it was all about CX, customer experience. And now it's almost like X marks the spot. Everything is X. So, whether it's like supplier experience or partner experience, right now it's about employee experience. And so using tools of digital, and Cognizant is a very large global technology services company. If you haven't gotten that memo and you're, sort of in reactive mode and not getting in front of this, not being if I can use the phrase, a Renaissance CHRO, and connecting those dots to the future and driving positive EX. I mean, my God, 2020, this is a period where we are rethinking everything. We've gone through the pandemic, go to racial awakening, we've got equity awakening, with the business roundtable. If that's not enough for you, talking about, shareholders and stakeholders, if that's not your people, that's huge incentive. The second part of that is, what do we do as individual employees? And so there's a stat, I think it's 79% of respondents rely on their company to help give them a view into what the future of work is going to be. So it's a very reactive, hopefully I'm going to learn this by osmosis, maybe not. And I think that we, America, such as it is, we need to do a much better job, not only in our corporations, in our business communities, chambers of commerce at the municipal level, but also in secondary education, universities, and even primary education, really inculcating a mindset to foster lifelong continuous learning. I think the problem when it comes to actual bona fide, like receiving a paycheck, work day in and day out for most employees, is they don't have the latitude in the way that their job is structured to actually make the time, to take the time to do that type of learning. And there's a lot to that in terms of just, day in and day out work practices. But I also think that sort of systemically how we all of us might be able to kind of reframe that structure. You made a great point about the 1970s. I mean, I would go back to, really the end of World War II in corporate structure. I mean, we are in a world where we're going from hierarchies in those structures to what we call wirarchies, which are much flatter. connecting the dots to people that maybe are outside the organization to give you inputs, to give you that type of learning from different sectors to be able to do your job. And in fact, 21 HR Jobs of the Future, which was the report that we published very recently, I'm very proud to say it was published in the Harvard Business Review as well. We talked a lot about these themes of how both senior leaders as well as workers themselves can sort of grab hold of the steering wheel, if you like, and sort of a hackneyed phrase, but sort of drive that onto that road to the future of work. It's sort of your field guide of how to do that from an HR perspective.
Yeah, and I definitely want to chat about that, not before saying or commenting on something that you just said, which is people who are full-time employees, they are, there was a research in 2017 by Upwork saying that people who are gig workers, they are 4 times more likely to self-invest in learning than people who are full-time employees. And of course it happens because these people who are gig workers, they have to be around, trying to, get a project, and their skills need to be very refined and very up to date all the time. Whereas at work, you either don't get that support from your organization, don't have the incentive perhaps to learn, because like you said before, one thing that truly scares me is that nobody is painting the picture of what the future looks like for you in your career in the organization. And they're not telling you perhaps, you know what, Enrique, in the next 3 years, the 100% of things that you do, we won't need them all in this organization. We will need 50% of them. So you need to learn these other things for us to be able to utilize the rest of the 50% of your time in this organization. Otherwise, how do we deal with this? So I think it's just so powerful that you are commenting on that. Now, let me switch gears a little bit here and get into the 21 jobs for the future of HR. I don't know if we're going to be able to cover them all, but I would love to know at least the ones that you think are, really, that when you saw them, you were like, whoa, this is impressive. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah. So just a little bit of the history of 21 HR Jobs of the Future. It was we're talking about 2018 a little while ago. I think it was in 2018. My team, the Center for the Future of Work, published this. So it's 21 Jobs of the Future, and we had a tremendously positive reaction to this. And it was, not just parochial to HR. It was sort of across the board. If you're a bank, an insurance company, a healthcare payer, or retailer, what might some of those jobs look like? Again, we had so much success. We followed it up with this one. You gotta love my little props behind my shoulder. This is 21 more jobs of the future. So we ended up with this basket of 42 jobs of the future that basically we arrayed them on a 2x2 grid, right? And so the X, you can imagine, again, I said I used to be a Gartner analyst, love magic quadrants. There's a quadrant in this, not a magic quadrant. The X-axis in this quadrant is time. So between 2020 and 2030, when do we expect these jobs to hit? And then the Y-axis is the level of tech centricity. So some jobs, like a quantum machine learning analyst, will, probably require some schooling background in electrical engineering, computer science. But further down that continuum on that Y-axis, these jobs will be suffused with deceptively complex technology, but you won't need to have that computer science background to use it. So you talked about, like, an Uber driver or a Lyft driver. The platform they use to do their job is very slick piece of technology, but they don't have to know how to do computer science. Yeah. So we arrayed these 21 plus 21, so 42 jobs of the future. And then it occurred to us that it might be interesting to take a look at that type of a prism into the HR function and think about what jobs of the future might hit. So we partnered, some of you guys that are listening to this might know of Future Workplace, somebody called Gene Meister. We've done a lot of work with Gene in the past, as we do with you guys and others, and partnered to use their network and effectively brainstorm into scores upon scores upon scores of potential candidates for what these HR jobs of the future might look like. And then based on ranking them in terms of high, medium, and low priority, we were able to winnow that list down to the final 21. So that was a little bit of the background. And I think, I would encourage everybody to download it. It's a PDF document. You get it for free. It's on futureofwork.com, which is where all of our research from the Cognizant Center for the Future of Work is. And each one of these 21 is written up as a JD. So it would be like, here it is, the year 2029, and your manufacturing production line sends down a rec for 100 VR immersion counselors. Like, what does a virtual reality immersion counselor look like, right? We're starting to see glimmers. You squint, you can kind of see the future today. There's companies like Striver out there and so forth that are doing a lot of really leading edge stuff on, again, learning and development using virtual reality. But what are the skills, the quals, the education backgrounds, the requirements for these types of jobs? So you can find those JDs. That's what the report is constituted as. So Enrique, by way of Cleveland, to answer your question, I think that some of the ones that that I think are pretty cool in the list, I'd probably just say, again, if 2020, sort of like an accordion shrinking time, like the future of work is a now of work. Like, we have a job that we, a year ago, we're thinking about. It's the work from home facilitator, right? In 2019, a lot of companies were allowing work from home, but there probably wasn't a specific role in HR that was necessarily tasked with doing that. And suddenly, boom, the pandemic hits, March comes, we're all having to go into lockdown. For some companies where maybe it's like, in a year, maybe in 2 years, we will slowly phase in our hashtag WFH protocol. That was having to be released in like a weekend. And so, Cognizant, we are, give or take, like 300,000 employees worldwide, and work from home enabling with laptops, the amount of scale of employee base that we have, even we were going through that. So that's one. I think another big common theme that we see, you and I were just talking about it, the gig economy and how more and more jobs will probably flip into, particularly as we have an aging population, we'll have more gig workers. And so the gig economy manager is one, and sort of a variation on that theme is something that we are calling the second act coach. So for people that felt like, I'm going to be locked into my same job for, 30, 35 years. And again, due to the virus or other factors, their job, their company's gone into Chapter 11, they have been laid off. What does that second act look like for them? And so that's another one that I think is very much a job of.
That's a very interesting one. That's that's a very, very interesting job, and actually one that sounds like not only for people who have been doing the same thing for 30, 35 years, but even people who, more recent in their careers. And let me ask you something, Rob, across all the jobs that you looked at, what are some common themes across all those jobs? What are some common skills that you found that all the jobs that you described in the 21 jobs for the future of HR may be requiring?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just a little bit of a setup for that. Across all of these 21 jobs of the future that we've been writing about for the last few years, there's 3 C's that we talk about all the time. It's coaching, connecting, and caring. And those are eminently human skills, to be able to coach other people, connect other people together in networked environments, and caring, right? And so I think that if you kind of overlay and transpose that thinking into HR, and this is something that we talked about in the HBR article that we wrote, that effectively these connective threads in the HR function manifest themselves into a few buckets. The first is individual and organizational resilience. And man, if COVID-19 didn't ever give us a test case for being organizationally and individually resilient, I'm not sure what it would be. Maybe war, heaven forbid. The second was organizational trust and safety, right? In order to do some of these things for the future of work, you got to feel like you can trust your company. And hopefully, like the future forward company is also the safe company as well, particularly in an era of algorithms, automation, and AI. There's data all over the place, and people don't want to be freaked out that, the company is sort of like, Big Brother in 1984, like spying on them, using data, breaching privacy in a way that's not appropriate. In fact, there's a job of the future in 21 HR jobs of the future that's called the algorithm bias auditor. And that's very much top of mind for so many businesses now. And, you bet your bottom dollar that if the FTC here in the United States or the European Commission, pass some legislation in the next year or two that say, the future organization has to be a fair organization, and you statutorily have to sign off that your mission critical algorithms are not biased. This is going to be a critical role for HR. So that was number two. Creativity and innovation was number three. Data literacy was another one. Again, we talked about the criticality of analytics, criticality of being, down in the weeds of big data and being able to see the big picture for the workforce, but in a way that's not creepy or overbearing for employees. And then probably the last one, we talk a lot about robots, it's the age of the robots. And so human and machine partnerships. In fact, there's a role that we identified, the human machine teaming manager, which really is about getting that art of the job that I talked about blended with the science of the job. So if you're a nurse, or if you're a teacher, or if you're a construction worker, or a politician, or heck, even a CEO yourself, how do you get that blend of the art and science of the job just right? And that'll be the role of the human machine teaming manager on that human machine partnership riff.
This is amazing. Let me ask you this list, first of all, the 3 C's and the list that are underpinning all the jobs for the future is just fascinating. I know that there are individuals in HR, very progressive, very far ahead of the game. And maybe you talk to them and they already have all these things in their minds. Some others are pretty far behind. Now, I separate HR people, the individuals and the leaders doing the work from HR as a function, right? The whole of HR. If you think about all this design that you have created with the 3 C's, these 5 elements underpinning the 21 jobs for the future of HR, on a scale, and I don't want to oversimplify this, but I'm going to do it with a question. On a scale to 1 to 100, where do you think HR is today vis-a-vis these skills, capabilities, this mindset that you're describing for the future of HR? HR as a function. I'm not talking about the individuals.
Oh man, there's so much work to do. We're just scratching the surface, Enrique. And so it's daunting. It's scary. It might feel like, an unnatural act if you've grown up your career as a senior HR professional or risen through the ranks. Just like any other of your colleagues that have had to go through the the buzzsaw of digital transformation and disruption. Like I said, if you don't do this, somebody else is going to do it to you. And so what I think is great about what you guys are doing at Hacking HR is you're providing a really bright light to say, nobody's figured out these rules yet. Nobody's really cracked the code great. There's some points of light out there. And so if we're sharing sort of these examples, and some of the feedback that we've gotten, most of it's extremely positive on the 21 HR Jobs of the Future report, but some people are saying, well, this sounds patently ridiculous. The note, like a second act coach. Well, what is that? Well, effectively, before it can be built, it has to be sort of dreamt. Yeah. And so as a futurist, even if you think this is ridiculous, there's thousands of businesses out there that have learned the hard way that if they don't do this, they will die. Yeah. And even as I said, if the future of work and some of these things is the now of work, if you didn't have a work from home, facilitator, who cares what it's called? You were kind of left out twisting in the wind and you had to do it really fast. So that's a learning opportunity. So I would say, as a good analyst, on your question of like 1 to 100, like there's so much, I'd say probably like at best, probably like 25% of businesses are ready to do this. It's not for lack of want or desire, but like we have this little saying in my team, which is the future of work is always in the future, but it can start tomorrow. And I think that, if you get into strategy and tactics, that's a code to live by.
Absolutely. I have this saying that to me, the leaders of the future are the ones that are going to have the ability to see the invisible and believe the unbelievable. And what I mean by that is when you see the invisible is, you are, wherever you're sitting, you have a horizon. And if you have the ability with your team to get up higher and higher and see further and further, you're going to have the opportunity to prepare better for that. But to prepare better for that future that you're seeing, which may be invisible to others, then you got to believe the unbelievable, which is exactly what you just said. Some people believe second act coach. What the hell? I don't need that. But then when you try to find specific skills that you can't find in the incoming workforce, but you have to look for them in the outgoing workforce, if you will, the people who are retiring, then you're going to need to make sure that you are helping them, help you as an organization. So, or the remote work manager. There are hundreds of companies out there who thought that they would never, ever allow their people to work from home, and they had to do it. They didn't have any other option. So they didn't believe that this was going to happen. If they had believed that before, they may have been, better prepared for what we have been going through in 2020. So let me ask you this, Rob, as we wrap up this amazing conversation. You said something before. The future is going to happen in the future, but we're going to start creating it tomorrow. Where do we start? What will be item number one in the list to start preparing for the future?
I think one of the first things that HR executives can do is, if you don't have a tight linkage with your chief strategy officer in your company, start there, right? What I see, and this is really exciting to me, is if we kind of grow the tendrils across the, bridge the divide, across the aisle, however we want to call it, between the HR function and the strategy of the company, that's it right there. Because the strategists are thinking about, where do we want to take this bank? Where do we want to take this biopharmaceutical company? Where do we want to take this retailer in the future? These are the things that we're thinking about. And so getting that foresight, again, not to over rely on it, but this is Gartner Magic Quadrant. It's like completeness of vision and ability to execute. So if the company, the CEO, the board of directors, all those people matter. But I do feel like strategy officers and CHROs can work to help bridge that divide between strategy and execution. And so that'll give you foresight into where the company is trying to go, and sort of give you some, if you like, lily pads or blocks to be thinking about, this is how I can help put that into effect. Because the CIO of the company is having those conversations. Where do we take the technology suite? Where do we take the investments from a platforms perspective? And for too many HR professionals, I've heard this my entire career as well, I never got a seat at the table. It's like, get yourself to the table by making those connections. And the good news is, I think a lot more CHROs are having those conversations. And one of the things that we talk about in the report is that these jobs of the future ladder up to each other. So that is to say that I'm going to pull up the list here. A good example of this would be a role that we call the human bias officer, right? I think that's going to be a really big theme going forward into the 2020s. So how can you get distant early warning, as that's a pretty senior role as we've identified it, by working in concert with algorithm bias auditors, as we talked about, or HR data detectives. I talked to a lot of companies where it's like, what's your strategy for next year? And it's like, well, we're going to hire, 1,000 data scientists. And it's like, where are you going to get 1,000 data scientists? It's not like Berkeley and Stanford and all the other schools are churning out that, you can't get them. So how can you bridge the gap by working with new roles like a data detective? And so all of that accrues. If you ladder and bridge all that up, it's really about the strategy of the company. And so anyway, lots of words there, but I think, as a first step, those are the kinds of connections to make. Get that seat at the table, have your line of sight, 3, 5, 10 years down in the future, and use the 21 HR jobs of the future as a way to help, put that into practice.
Love that. Love the idea of partnership with strategy, people in technology, of course, the C-suite of the organization and whatnot. So, Rob, thank you so much for this incredible conversation. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Enrique. Thanks a million. Take care of yourself. Great talking to you.
You too. Thank you. And
Bye-bye.
thank you, everybody. Stay tuned for the next Hacking HR podcast. See you all soon. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for watching or listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please follow us on our social media and subscribe to our newsletter so that you can stay informed of all the things that we're putting together for you from the Hacking HR community. Thank you so much. Please continue to stay safe, stay well, stay strong, and we will see you soon.